The Kingdom of Alba refers to the Kingdom of Scotland between the deaths of Donald II in 900, and of Alexander III in 1286, which then led indirectly to the Scottish Wars of Independence. The name is one of convenience, as throughout this period the elite and populace of the kingdom were predominantly Pictish Gaels or later Pictish Gaels and Scoto-Norman, and differs markedly from the period of the Stuarts, in which the elite of the kingdom were speakers of Middle English, which later evolved and came to be called Lowland Scots. There is no precise Gaelic equivalent for the English terminology Kingdom of Alba, as the Gaelic term Riahushnarh Alba means Kingdom of Scotland. English-speaking scholars adapted the Gaelic name for Scotland to apply to a particular political period in Scottish history during the High Middle Ages. Royal Court. Little is known about the structure of the Scottish royal court in the period before the coming of the Normans to Scotland. Before the reign of David I. A little more is known about the court of the later 12th and 13th centuries. In the words of Geoffrey Barrow, this court was emphatically feudal, Frankish, non-Celtic in character. Some of the officers were Gaelic in origin, such as the Hostarius, the man in charge of the royal bodyguard, and the Ranair, the Gaelic-speaking member of the court whose job was to divide the food. The seneschal or dapifer had been hereditary since the reign of David I. The steward had responsibility for the royal household and its management. The chancellor was in charge of the royal chapel. The latter was the king's place of worship, but as it happened, was associated with the royal scribes, responsible for keeping records. Usually, the chancellor was a clergyman, and usually he held this office before being promoted to a bishopric. The chamberlain had control and responsibility over royal finances. The constable, likewise, hereditary since the reign of David I. The constable was in charge of the crown's military resources. The butler, the marshal or mareschal. The mareschal differed from the constable in that he was more specialized, responsible for and in charge of the royal cavalry forces. In the 13th century, all the other officers tended to be hereditary, with the exception of the chancellor. The royal household of course came with numerous other officers. The most important was probably the aforementioned Hostarius, but there were others such as the royal hunters, the royal foresters and the cooks.